We're going to get started in about 2 or 3 minutes here. So as you come in to the room, please uh, go ahead and make sure that you can hear me. First of all, if you can hear, that's great. Also, you can make sure you get access to the chat over there. What I did was I put a couple of things in the chat for you. I put a link in there to um, to some of the free things that you're going to get for attending today. So you've got I put a link to an editable version of our of the hitting assessment tool that you're going to see here, and then I also that's where you can go to do the Q&A if you have any questions as we are going as you're going through this here. We can do some of the Q&A. So we'll get going in just a few minutes, waiting on a couple more people to get here. I am going to be recording this, so you'll be able to get a copy of this. I'll be able to send this out once we get into once we're done with it. I'll probably send it out sometime on Monday. So. All right. Let's see here. This is the first time I've tried one of these live web clinics. I'm pretty excited about it. So thanks for attending today's web clinic. I'll probably do more of these periodically, assuming that my technology goes well and I'm able to. That's really the hardest thing for me. It's not necessarily the content. It's really more about the technology and making sure that I have the time to to get it done and everything like that. Usually it's easier for me if I can record them, but I like doing this because it allows me to get you guys some Q&A. So if you have questions about running one of these with your team, I think to me that's really the biggest thing that I try to do is I try to get across to people that it is about running this in a team setting. It's really, I'm going to say easy, but it's relatively simpler to do this when you're in an individual setting. But for me, it's about what do I do when I've got 25 guys and 2 coaches? How do I run this? How do I set it up? And so that's really what we're going to be focusing on today. I'm going to put a slide deck up here in a second. If you go to the link that I put in the chat, you'll be able to get this slide deck, and also you'll be able to get an editable copy of the actual physical assessment that you're going to see in a little bit. So let's go ahead and share the slide deck with us now, and we can go ahead and get started here. All right, so the topic for today is going to be running a hitting assessment with your team in a team setting. So just a little bit about me. I'm not sure. I think most of the people here are a little bit familiar with me. I'm a high school coach. I'm not a professional speaker. You'll hear me stumble over words sometimes. I'll say a lot. I do that. I don't mean to point that out, but that's just kind of what I do. I don't have 10 state championships. You see some people's resume and it's like, they have X number of state championships and they have, tons of accolades. What we've been able to do is get the most out of players on a daily basis. And I've learned a lot from trying to get, players that we don't have 71 players on a team, but trying to get them to compete with those types of teams. And so that's one of the reasons why I started Cornerstone. It was a lot for me to try to organize my thoughts and try to get myself a little bit more of a a little bit more organized, a little bit more uh, see, there's one of those times where I'm stumbling over words there. If you are not familiar with our podcast, it's 15 to 20 minutes of no nonsense content. So you can go check that out on iTunes. I put one out about every Monday along with little smaller ones in between. Um, it's on iTunes, it's on Stitcher, it's on Spotify, it's on Google Play, it's on all those things. We also offer Cornerstone Elite. It's our monthly or yearly membership to everything that we have in our library. And so we've got a lot of good stuff that goes on in there. I give you individualized one-on-one help and help you out with the things that are going on specifically with your team. It's really where you can go bring modern day coaching into a team setting. We do have a Black Friday special that's coming up here. If you have not yet signed up for our Black Friday waiting list, what that'll get you is it'll get you a 48-hour head start onto one of our 50 memberships that we are offering. It's going to be a $1 30-day trial to Cornerstone Elite. So you can go to cornerstonecoachingacademy.com/waiting. I'll also put that in the chat here in a little bit once I get through this. Once I get through the slide deck and give you guys our information. But we've got over 70 people on the waiting list now. And once we sell out of those 50 memberships, that's going to be it. And the reason I'm limiting it to 50 is because I like to make sure that I give people, a lot of personalized attention, answer questions. Our Q&As are great in there. And so I want to make sure that we get that done for our members. If you do have questions about the hitting assessment, please put those in the chat. And I will get to those at the very end of our presentation here. And like I said, I'm trying out a new software here, Zoom. So if you're able, if there's any technical difficulties, I do apologize. We'll see how this works, and if it works, then I'll continue to use this. If not, then I'll go back to my other live web clinic software that I've used before. So again, if you have questions, go ahead and put those in the chat, and I'll get to those at the end, specifically pertaining to hitting assessments is what we're looking for. So I always start with why on everything that I do recently. To me, that's such a huge question. It's a powerful question. Like, why am I going to run a hitting assessment with my team? Because what answering the question why does is it makes sure that there's going to be a follow through, because when you see the result that's going to happen when you do it, right? If you just say, I want to run a hitting assessment because I've seen it on Twitter, or it sounds like the thing to do now, so I'm going to run a hitting assessment. There's no powerful why behind that other than you're trying to be like other people. The why for me as to why I decided to run a formal hitting assessment with our players last year was because it was the only way I could think of that would allow me to individualize within a team setting, was to formally sit down and give players a plan and a path in order for them to get better. So each player, we had a meeting with them with the rubric that I'm going to show you, or the template that I'll show you later on in this assessment. And I put one in there that's a little bit that's filled out too, so you can see how we filled it out and some of the things we talked about with those players. But it gives each player an individual plan and path for them to level up, for them to get better, whatever that is, wherever they're at now. We meet them at that place and we give them a specific plan for them in order to become better, to work on their weaknesses, to accentuate their strengths. So the player knows it when he shows up to practice every single day. He has a goal when we go to our hitting stations or when we go to our hitting portion of practice. I think it gives a lot of credibility to your coaching staff as well. When a player brings that home, when they bring home their hitting assessment and they show their parents and they say, look, the coach sat down and they took video, they did this, and here's what they found, and here's what I need to work on to move myself again, to level up, whether they're on the bench and they want to become a starter, whether they are a starter and they want to become all conference, whether they're all conference and they want to play in college, whatever it is, they're able to take that home, sit down with their parents, and it really does give your coaching staff a little bit of a credibility with your players, with their parents, that you are giving them personalized, individualized attention. I loved this about it too, that it gave individual attention to the bottom of your roster. That is a hard thing to do in a team setting, is to treat your players 1 through 20, 1 through 25, and give them all, personalized attention. This was a really good way for us to do that last year. The players at the bottom of our roster who weren't seeing much playing time, every single day when they showed up, they knew what they had to do. They knew exactly what they needed to improve on in order to move move the needle for them. And it was a really good way for them to have a purpose throughout the entire season. The other thing is it's going to help you win more games. If you make your hitters better, if you can help them with their weaknesses, bottom line is you are going to win more games. And yeah, we're all about player development. We want to help our players go play in college. We want to make sure that they, we want to build character. But we're in athletics, a lot of us, because we like to compete and we like to win. And so this is a great way for you to help your team win more games. Let's talk about the organization of a hitting assessment. So what I'm going to do through these couple sections is I'm going to basically give you like the options, because we have a certain setup at our facility and you have a certain setup that may be different. You may have more players, less players. You may have more coaches, less coaches. So I'm not going to tell you like, here's what we did and it's exactly what you should do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and give you things to consider and then some ideas about how you can organize it in order to meet your individual needs where you're at in your program. So how many players do you have? We last year had 25 players with about 4 POs. So that was 21 hitters we wanted to assess. And we had 2 coaches. So what we had to do is we had to decide, do we want to do this hitting assessment in small groups where we bring them in for about a half an hour at a time, maybe groups of 4, bring them in for half an hour at a time over 2 days, or did we want to make it one station in a full team practice? We ended up choosing the latter one because I did not want to give up. I figured, well, we can have bullpens going on, or we can have our other coach running some infield stuff while we're doing our hitting assessment in one station of a full team practice. But those are certainly 2 options, and it might depend on your facility, right? If you are a coach that has 1 batting cage, for instance, or if you're a coach that has, you're going to need all your coaches to collect data or to record video or whatever it may be. You're probably going to look at doing it as a small group, but it really does just depend on what you and your individual situation is. This year, we're probably going to do it as 1 or 2 stations in a full team practice, again, broken up over a couple of different days. You're also going to need to look at what technology do you have. If you have an iPhone, you have slow motion video, most likely. I forget which iPhone that started with, maybe 6. If you have an iPhone 6 or newer, you have slow motion video. That's a great thing to be able to do because if you don't have some of these other pieces of technology, you can get information from video. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. Another piece of technology that I'm incredibly high on now is blast motion. It's a little sensor that goes on the end of the bat. That can be switched from bat to bat, and you buy it. It's about $125, $150 depending on when you purchase. If you can find sales, that kind of thing. Last year on Black Friday, I bought 3 of them. So after you take advantage of our Black Friday discount, maybe go check over at Blast Motion to see if you can get some of theirs. But it's going to give you 4 pieces of information with their totally free accounts. You don't need to pay anything extra than just the $125 or $150 or $100 or whatever you end up getting it for. It gives you bat speed, time to contact, attack angle, and vertical bat angle. And those are 4 things that we think are really important. And so we were able to record them this year for our players with our hitting assessments. Do you have some kind of a launch monitor? My guess is most likely you do not. But if you do, that's great. That should definitely be included. That would be like a HitTrax or a Rapsodo or a Flight Scope or something like that. If you don't, do you have a radar gun? Do you have a pocket radar? Because that's a way that you can measure your player's exit velocity, which absolutely should be part of any hitting assessment. Basically because our number 1 goal when we step in the box is to hit the ball hard. And it's difficult for a coach to look at a ball in a cage and say, hey, where was that ball hit hard or not? If you have data to back it up, that ball was hit at 83 miles an hour. Yes, that is hard, or, depending on your level, no, that is not hard. So I would definitely try to get, at the bare minimum, blast motion, an iPhone, and then one of the pocket radars. I think they're like $299. So that would be the minimum I would try to have. But again, you don't need this, and I'm going to show you some ways that you can get around some of these things, and then some of the pitfalls you might run into as well. You're also going to need to look at how you're collecting information. We used a Google Sheet for our blast motion because we didn't purchase the accounts that come with it. If you purchase the accounts for each of your players, every swing they take is recorded and they can look at their data. It's really simple. We did not do that. We just had a coach there with a Google Sheet who was recording the information as it popped up. We went back through, created averages after that, and I'll show you those things in just a few minutes here. You certainly can use paper and pencil. I would maybe create a spreadsheet ahead of time and then record what you're looking for throughout the assessment. You can also, maybe you have some tech that's going to automatically record it. So like we have a Rapsodo hitting unit that automatically records all the batted ball data. And so maybe you have something like that. But those are the three main things that you can choose from. We personally use Google Sheets. I think it's a really nice tool. You can also then share it with the players so they can get access to it. It's a really nice tool. You can share it with all your coaches. You can keep running tallies. We kept leaderboards in there, posted them up in our locker room. Again, things I'll show you in just a few seconds here. How many coaches are you going to need? Do you need a coach to throw? Well, do you need a coach to record data? Do you need a coach to record video? Are you doing a visual assessment? So you have a coach doing that. You need someone to hold a radar gun. Those are all things that you're going to need to determine ahead of time. And what of these can a player do? A player can certainly hold a radar gun. A player can almost certainly record video if you need them to. Would you have your players recording data? Maybe, maybe not. But you just have to figure out ahead of time how your coaches are going to be deployed throughout this assessment. And also, if you go back to one of our first slides there, I talked about your setup. If you need multiple coaches for your hitting assessment, you may want to bring them in small groups. Let's see here. Yeah, so there it was right there. If you need multiple coaches, you might choose the small groups instead of one station in a full team practice. Again, depending on the size of your staff, depending on the size of your team, and depending on how your coaches are deployed. Maybe you have two coaches who can run the hitting assessment while you have, your pitching coach over on the other side working with pitchers, or an infield coach working with infielders, something along those lines. All right, so let's talk about running the actual assessment. We want to run it as close to game-like as possible. So what I did in this slide was I put up kind of the degrees and levels of how close something is to game-like, because the only thing that matters is what they do in game, right? That's what we're trying to assess, is what can they do in game? How can we make them better in game? And we want to make sure that we can get as close to that as possible. Now, obviously, we all have limitations, that's why I put all these up here, but we want to try to get it as close to game-like as possible. So I would not recommend doing a hitting assessment off of a batting tee. You're going to get numbers that do not even closely mimic what you will get in game. Just as a little bit of an example of this, I worked with some younger kids this past year, some 8, 9-year-olds, and we were using blast motion with them just to have some fun and see how quick their bat speed and all that fun stuff. It was more like a game than a training tool, but man, did they love it. And we're just working T-work, right? We're just working T-work, and their bat speeds, I forget where they were, but their bat speeds were, pretty consistent on the tee. And then all I did was I threw in the double T inside-outside drill, where they would load and I would say inside or outside, and they'd hit the ball outside or they'd hit the ball inside. And it was incredible how much their bat speed dropped just by making that one single decision. And so that's why I don't think running it on a tee is very good at all, because I don't think you're going to get data that closely mimics what they're going to do in the game. If you wanted to have part of this be off a tee, maybe you're going to do like some exit velocity off of a tee. I think that's okay. What that does is that kind of shows you the limit of the engine they currently have. So that might be okay. Doesn't show you though if that if that engine's going to translate into the game, right? You know, we've seen guys who off a tee have bat speed that's, you know, 70, 75. You know, I got into the upper 80s on one off the tee, and when I went to even just front toss, that dropped tremendously as soon as I had to hit a moving ball. But if you want to take a look at it and say, okay, we're going to do exit velocity off a tee, and that way we know what the limit of the engine is, I think that's okay. But when you're actually looking at assessing the swing and the things that are going on and the load, the tack angle, things like that, I would not do that off of a tee. You might use front toss. Okay, so we're moving up one level then. This is a little bit more game-like. We've got a ball coming towards us. Again, not ideal. They don't have to worry about usually a lot of velocity. They don't have to worry about a swing, no swing decision. So that's not ideal. The next one will be an overhand short toss, which is kind of what you see on the slide picture there. Again, we're moving up one. You're probably going to be a little bit less accurate with that short toss there. And so they may have some swing, no swing decision. They may have a, you know, they may have some location issues, right, inside, outside, where they have to, you may be able to move the ball around and manipulate them a little bit. Where we did ours, I think these next two are probably at about the same level. We did ours off of a mixed BP. Mixed batting practice. And actually, this is one more thing I will throw in that. If you go into the chat and you see where the link in there that's in there right now, I'm going to throw this in there for you as well, which is a document I created that with Jonathan Gellner from Ahead of the Curve podcast that gives you angles and distances and velocities for simulating in-game angles and velocity from batting practice. And so I'll throw that in there as well for you, so you can go to that link. It's in the chat, and at the end here you can just use that link to go see those three things. That one's not in there yet, so if you go in there, you won't see that one in there. I'll put that in here when we're done. But mixed BP is basically going to be, you know, fastballs, breaking balls, and I'm trying to mix locations as well. So I'm not just throwing down the middle. I'm throwing balls on purpose. I'm throwing breaking balls that are in the dirt. I'm throwing breaking balls that are high. If you have the ability to do this, I think it's a pretty good way to do it, because you can simulate game velocity even though you're going to be at a shorter distance. Like I was probably at 40 or 45 feet when I was doing this. You're simulating game velocity, but also they have to make a decision about swing, no swing, and fastball, breaking ball, which I think is huge in trying to find something that's going to be more game-like. You might also use a game velocity machine. I think this is a good option if you don't have a coach who's able to throw that mixed BP. It'll give you an idea of what they're going to do against velocity, but at the same time, there's very little swing, no swing decision, and there's also very little, you know, there's no chance of the machine throwing a fastball and then throwing a breaking ball right after that, right? Like it's going to be a fastball, and then 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 if we want to throw a curveball, we have to change the dials and move the machine, and so that's the one thing that is missing, is that the possibility of it throwing a breaking ball or a changeup. Although our hack attack, I will say, does throw enough pitches that are just a little bit outside of that, you know, sweet spot. It's not like every pitch is in the exact same spot. So we do have guys who take against that. I would set that up. So if I was doing game velo machine, I would set it up to the high average end of your of game velocity. So like, you know, if an average high school fastball you're going to see is like 79 to 81, I'd probably set it up at 82 to 84, somewhere in there. That way they're seeing something that's a little bit challenging, and because they don't have, you know, that swing, no swing decision, really, the velocity, the speed will challenge them a little bit more. I would not set it up like way at the top end. I wouldn't set it up like 92 or something like that, because you're going to find a lot of them are going to have to cheat to get there. And the swing that they use there is going to be totally different than what you'll see an average day against a 79 to 81 high school pitcher. The larger sample size, the better. We went with at least 12 swings in each of our tests while we're trying to move the ball around the zone so that we get a good idea of how they handle the inside pitch, how they handle the outside pitch, how they handle breaking ball. If you're doing the mixed BP, I would also put them in a And also put them in counts, right? So that you can assess how they do on 2 strikes, how they do when they're ahead in the count, how they do when they're behind in the count. Those are all things that can be part of this. The biggest, most important thing though, is you're gonna have to commit to this for all your tests. So don't do one test off of front toss and then do a next one off of game velo machine. You're gonna see totally different sets of numbers. I do have in there a live pitcher. You can do this obviously against live arms. My only problem there again is the data you get may not be consistent from player to player. Like if you have one player who's facing your number one, he's probably not going to look as good as a player who's facing a kid, at the back of your bullpen. And then when you run your retest in 5 weeks, like we ran our early test right, at the beginning of the season, we ran a retest 6 weeks later, we were in games. So if I throw that number one pitcher in my test, he's probably not going to be available to throw our retest during the season. So that's why I put live pitcher on there. If you have that luxury, awesome. If not, mixed BP or game velo would be the ones that I would tend to go towards. So what are we assessing here? Here are the things that we are assessing. If you're an elite member, I know we have a couple of those on the call here. This is in your recognizing, diagnosing, and fixing common hitting flaws course that's in there. So I'll show you how to do the assessment, and then these are the things that we have, the modules that we have in there right now, as far as what you can assess, and then our elite members have access to the specific drills and things that we're putting our players through in order to help with each of these possible weaknesses. So I'm going to be looking at their load. I'm going to be looking at their hands, their weight shift, things like that, their timing of their load. Do they have a good quality load? That's going to be a visual. So if you have video, or it can just be simply like I have a coach watching for that load. Video is probably better because you can go back and watch it again. However, I don't think there's anything wrong with just having a coach there visually assessing their load. Sequence is going to be visual, probably unless you have a K-vest, which we don't have, and maybe if you do have one of those, you're using that for your assessment. What we're looking for here is on slow motion video, we're just looking to make sure that the sequence of the swing goes from the ground up. That's basically what we're looking at. It's a visual test. Again, the slow motion helps tremendously with it. If the hands start coming before the hips turn, you'll be able to see that in slow motion video. The tack angle or bat path, this is where blast comes in. It's really helpful. It puts a number to it. You can see it in slow motion video. You can see if the bat path is traveling up, if it's traveling down at contact, or if it's traveling level. But blast does give you a number that you can put to it so that when you report to the kids, you can say your average attack angle was this, we need it to be here, or it's good, we're good. Adjustability and timing, this is going to be a visual thing. If you don't have technology that records this, what I mean by adjustability is the ability to hit different pitches to different parts of the field and to hit them solidly. This can be something you record on paper and pencil, just on a spray chart, like where are they hitting balls, and then rating them, how hard they're hitting them. So that's not something you need tech for. You can create something that you can record on that, maybe like a 1 to 5 hitting range or something like that, and then drawing a line where they hit the ball and then numbering it. If you don't have tech, that's certainly a good way to assess what they're doing and their ability to hit balls to all fields. Bat speed and exit velocity, this is going to be a quantitative thing. I would say definitely look at exit velocity in some manner. I don't think there's a coach out there. I know some coaches are like, oh, exit velocity, but it's just hitting the ball hard. We want to hit the ball hard. So measure it if you can, any way you can, even if it's just a pocket radar off of a tee, perfectly good. Quickness. And if you don't have a blast, this is going to be anecdotal. This is going to be something you look at and just say, especially if you're in that mixed BP where you're moving up so that you're at a game velocity, or if you're at the game velocity machine or slightly above game velocity, this is going to be just something you say, hey, are they quick enough to get to a pitcher with good velocity? And then pitch recognition is another one that if you're using that mixed BP, that's going to be another one that you're going to certainly want to look at. If you are familiar with my hitting pyramid, pitch recognition and plan is the bottom of it. It's the base. It's the thing that makes all hitting go. So we've talked a lot about the swing, but really hitting is not just swinging, and pitch recognition is a huge part of hitting. So we want to make sure that's included in our assessment. All right, so what tech do you have? Your eyes, that's technology. Slow motion video, you can look at the load, you can look at attack angle, you can look at their sequence through slow motion video. Do you have blast motion? You can look at bat speed, you can look at their attack angle, time to contact, and vertical bat angle, all of those things. Those are the 4 things that we look at. I know that the picture I have up here has peak hand speed in it, but those are the 4 main things that we look at with our hitters. And then we want to try to make sure that we are improving them. Here's just I blacked out the names here, but here's what we did with our leaderboards this past year. So you see we took their average bat speed, and we posted in our locker room, highest to lowest, average bat speed. Here's the team average, 65.918. And then the attack angle, there's not really any reason to have an average attack angle, but we did post this in our locker room also, so players could kind of see where their attack angle was. Our goal for our players was between 5 and 15 degrees. What we saw from last year with our players was that 4 to 12, our best hitters were in that 4 to 12 range for average attack angle. And so we certainly want them to be in that range, but it gives them a good idea of where they are. Hey, I'm struggling to hit. Why? Well, my bat speed is 62.5 and my attack angle is negative 17.6, and those are the things I have to work on. So again, here's a report from Rapsodo that we got. You don't need that though. I certainly like having it, but you could do this without it. You can take your exit velocity. You can look at launch angle anecdotally as number of line drives that they hit. Our goal is to hit line drives, and hopefully some of them will carry over outfielders' heads and some of them will carry into, over the fence. But we want to hit line drives. And so if my launch angle assessment is simply how many line drives do you hit out of 12 or 20 or 25, or if you're doing it over a longer period of time, 30, how many fly balls do you hit? How many ground balls do you hit? That is an assessment of launch angle right there. And so, we're looking for our guys to hit balls between 10 and 25 degrees. That's kind of our sweet spot. You may have a different theory on that, but you can make this what you want, what fits your team. You may even have a different theory per kid, right? If you've got, like, our shortstop this year is a little guy. He's going to be fast, left-handed hitter, kind of like a little slap hitter. Ground balls have a higher value to him than like your big lumbering first baseman. So you can change it even by hitter, and you can say, you can run, you're left-handed, and so we want your launch angles to be between 0 and 15. But that's up to you. That's how you get to individualize this and make this what you guys need. You can be as simple as a hard hit ball chart as well. That's really all you need. Is those things. You don't need this fancy tech. You can do it on your own, creating your own with what's important to you. If you don't have blast, you can use slow motion to see attack angle, as I mentioned. I'd be careful with eyeballing bat speed, though. Sometimes I was way off with what I thought a guy was to what actually happened. You can eyeball vertical bat angle. Elite members, that's a module I'm going to be adding into our course in there. If you have not looked much at vertical bat angle, please make sure that you go ahead and do that. It's kind of an interesting thing that I've learned a lot about this off season, and something we're definitely going to include in our program with a couple of people. And then if you're testing against velocity for time to contact, just be aware of timing junkies. And those are the guys who they can cheat to get on time with high velocity. What you'll see though is that there's like a give and take, right? Like you could be really quick to the ball, like direct, but what's going to happen is your attack angle is going to drop way down and your bat speed is going to drop too. You can generate more bat speed by getting your hands way back and creating this long swing, but what's going to happen then is we're going to have a longer time to contact, and we're going to have probably a higher attack angle as well. Again, if you don't have a launch monitor, Pocket Radar 299. If you can do it on the field versus in the cage, it gives you a little bit of a better indication of what a ground ball, line drive, and fly ball are. One of the things that amazed me was when we got our Rapsodo was what a line drive actually looks like in the cage. It is towards the top of each of the panels. That's a line drive. If we're talking about balls that go over an infielder's head, the over the top of the infielder's head is going to be towards the top of the side panels over the L screen, and then to the top of the other side panels. Those other ones that slam into the side of the net, like at waist height, they look great. They're a line drive in the cage, but when you put them on a field, they're a ground ball. Here's what our hitting assessment looks like right here. We break it up into our blast, our Rapsodo, and then also the visual assessment that we do with them. We grade them 4 ways. Something that bothers them, I found on this is, and this is maybe a little bit to do with grade inflation in school, but average of grade level is a 2, and that bothers the heck out of them because they look at that and they think that's like way below average. So we do 1 is below average for grade level, and some of them are just numbers, right? Like, hey, your bat speed was here and it's below average. Average is a 2, 3 is if they're above average, and then 4 is like exceeds or well above average, if you will. So I'll show you in a second here exactly what one of these looks like when it's all filled out. So what do we do with all this? Well, it allows us to identify our players' strengths and weaknesses, which I think is huge because they show up every day to practice and they have a path for improvement. Some of them choose to take, most of our guys last year chose to take that path. Like when I went around and watched them in drills, or if they had free hitting time, they were working on the things that we had told them would help them. Like we had with the one that you're going to see here coming up was a player who had a really hard time hitting anything in the air to the pull side. Like they just could not. Everything they hit to the pull side was on the ground. And I would go around, watch him hit tees, and he's trying to work on that swing where he can pull the ball or he can pull the ball on a line instead of beating it into the ground. He's doing front toss drills, and he's focusing on trying to pull the ball in the air. When he's on his machine, he's trying to pull the ball and hit a line drive. And so I thought it was cool that you can go around in your practices and you can see which players are working on the things that you try to get them to do. The other thing that you're going to do is you're going to set goals for their next assessment. So when you see one of these filled out for us, you're going to see that the player has individual goals. And we say like, hey, here's when you want to do this. Here's where you want to, here's where we want you to be in 6 weeks when we do our next assessment. And you give them that next assessment date. And then because it's important, because you've set a why to this, now we're going to be able to, make sure that we make time for it in practice. And I schedule it out ahead of time. I say, here's our initial one. I look at our schedule. I try to find a week when we don't have a ton of games. And I say, here's when we're going to do our second one. Here's when we're going to do our third one. Sometimes with rainouts and stuff, you get things change, but that's basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, we're going to do it 3 times throughout the year. We'd like you to improve each time. So here's a sample of one that was filled out. And you can see how we just went through and I gave them their average bat speed, their peak bat speed, average attack angle, average time to contact, peak exit velocity, average exit velocity, barrel control. That to us, that's line drive percentage, and then also the difference between your peak and average exit velocity, average launch angle, average attack angles in there, and then our visual assessment. With what they need to work on in order to get better based on what we see from ourselves. And then the heat map is something we do get from Rapsodo, but you can formulate that however you'd like. Like if they're struggling with pitches away, that would be a heat map weakness, right? Or if they're struggling with pitches up, that'd be a heat map weakness. So you can see this player here, heat map strength was away and weakness was in. Hard hit ball percentage there. And then the launch angle of their hardest hit balls, that tells you a lot about their bat path too. And so when they're hitting the ball squarely, they should be slightly under center and creating just a little bit of backspin on the ball. And so ideally the hardest hit balls would be slightly higher than their average attack angle. This player's hardest hit balls were between -5 and 15 degrees. And part of that was because he had trouble pulling the ball in the air. So he was hitting balls hard on his pull side, but he was pounding them right into the ground. So then I give a little bit about the assessment down there. Sorry if you can't read my chicken scratch. When you're filling out 21 of these things, sometimes your hand gets a little sore. We're not used to writing that much. And then programming for improvement. This was huge for us. We would tell them exactly what they needed to do to get better. It was a little bit more in depth than what we put on here, because we would actually talk to them and say, here's more things. I can't put everything on here, but here's what you need to do. And then you see at the bottom there our next assessment goals. So he was at 61.2 average bat speed. We wanted him to get at 63 for his next one. His peak bat speed was at 68. We wanted to get him to 70. Average attack angle, we wanted him to be a little bit less than 15. And then our average time to contact, we wanted to get him down under 0.16. I don't recommend setting like crazy goals. So for this player here, I wouldn't say like average bat speed, let's move that up to 67, 68. Small incremental progress is what we're looking for. And so that's one of the things that we do with these hitting assessments. So I do want to, before I answer our questions here, I did want to talk a little bit more about our Black Friday special. I'll do it quickly, I promise. We are letting 50 new members in for Black Friday. We have a $1 30-day trial. If you purchase or join before Black Friday, you'll get our 2018 and 2019 winter clinics included as a bonus. Those are 8 talks each. I put out a winter clinic every year for our elite members, and so you'll get both of those as a bonus for joining. And then we did a little, for the people on the Black Friday waiting list, we did a little giveaway the other day where I put 4 pieces of content, things that can help them with their team this year. I put those on an email and had them vote on which ones they wanted. So I think they actually tied, and they got our new infield footwork that we're doing, as well as our bullpen scripts. And so we'll do that again with people on the waiting list. To get that, I'll leave a link to it in the chat here in a second once I get off this presentation. You can go to cornerstonecoachingacademy.com/waiting, and then you can get a 48-hour head start on that. Again, we have over 70 people on the waiting list, so there's a possibility this doesn't even get to Black Friday. So if that's something that interests you, if you're interested in a little more individualized help, along with everything that we have in Cornerstone Elite, our 50+ chaos hitting drills, the course that shows you how to, once you do your hitting assessment, how to then, what drills to use in order to improve on these individual weaknesses. Everything you need to run a high school, small college, or travel ball team is in Cornerstone Elite, along with me walking with you through that journey. So if you have a question, if you need anything, you send me an email, post something in the forums. We do 1 to 2 monthly Q&As with our members, and you can actually get the help that you need that's specific to your team, so that you can win more games next year. You take them to the next level. You take your coaching career to the next level. So again, cornerstonecoachingacademy.com/waiting. You can get on that waiting list. I'm closing it tomorrow. And then you can get a shot 48-hour advance to get one of those 50 memberships, plus the bonuses and all the free content that's coming your way between now and Black Friday. All right, so let's see if we have any questions about our hitting chat. So I'm going to escape out of that, stop share, and head over here to participants. Okay. It does not look like we have any questions at this point, so I'm going to give you just another couple seconds here. If you would like to ask any questions of me, you can do that. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and close up shop here and head out to get to football. I'm going to go watch a couple games at the early games, the noon games, Central Time, and then we will get to the Bears game at night. I got my number 55 jersey there. It's not actually Lance Briggs. It is Otis Wilson from the 1985 Bears. So if I don't see any questions here, we will go ahead and end the meeting. Again, I'm putting it in there right now, where you can join our waiting list. There we go. So it's cornerstonecoachingacademy.com/waiting. Get on the waiting list. Get all the free stuff between now and then. If you join one of the 50 memberships, just $1 trial, you get bonus of the 2018 and 2019 Winter Clinic. So it doesn't look like we have any questions, but I do want to say thanks for attending. I'll be sending out this recording in a little bit. The only way you could get the freebies, the giveaways there, the slide deck, as well as the velocity equivalence and our editable our editable assessment there was to attend live. So if you attended live, you can get the link to that in the chat. So thanks a lot. Have a great weekend. I will do this again later, and never stop learning.